And Nancy will help me out with these a little bit. So those numbers, it said for 2016, we had 101 confirmed cases of Lyme disease. We had, through public health, we had 861 lab-reported cases of Lyme disease. Only 20% of those are investigated. So we have those come in, the state will randomly decide which 20% are going to be investigated. And out of that, they come up with a number of actually confirmed Lyme cases. So while we, in our office, had 861 reported ones, the state recognizes that there were 101 confirmed cases of Lyme disease. That number could be much higher than that. Also, a lot of cases of Lyme aren't reported. The CDC estimates that only about 10% of cases of Lyme are reported. People don't see the tick, they don't recognize the signs and symptoms, or they're not diagnosed. So those numbers could actually be higher. So we're seeing an increase because of warmer winters. The ticks are moving. They're moving into different locations. That first slide showed kind of where we see Lyme. It used to just be the Northeast and the upper Midwest, and now it's moving. It is found in most states. It is the most, Lyme disease itself is the most common vector-borne illness in the world, and it's in 65 countries in the world. Okay, we do have an increase in deer population. Deer are what cause Lyme disease. They're just the end host, and they're what allow the adult ticks to feed and kind of be able to lay their eggs. Deforestation, we're moving into areas where the ticks used to be. We're kind of taking away some of the habitat of the predators, and our mouse is kind of at the base of the Lyme problem. The white-footed mouse that we find in the woods is a notorious carrier of the bacteria that causes Lyme disease. They also are very good at transmitting that to ticks. So when ticks are hatched, they're very small, they're looking for a tiny host. They land on the mouse. The mouse will transmit that bacteria to about 95% of the ticks that attach to them. So if a mouse has 100 ticks, now 95 of them have this bacteria that can make us sick. And they keep that through their life cycle. So once a tick is infected, they will have that bacteria. They can transmit that to their host, whatever they feed on, throughout the rest of their life cycle. Okay. So Lyme, it is a bacterial infection. It's caused by the bacteria Borrelia burgdorferi. It's transmitted solely through the bite of the black-legged tick or the deer tick. The problem with the deer ticks are they are the smallest of the ticks. So this time of year, they're about the size of a poppy seed. So now you have to try to find something the size of a poppy seed that's trying to hide on you so that it can feed. It makes it quite difficult to find them. They estimate that this time of year we miss about 75% of our tick bites because we just don't find the tick. Okay. Basically, there are 4 types of ticks we commonly see in New York State: the 2 dog ticks, the American dog tick, and the brown dog tick. These are going to be bigger. We've probably seen these on our pets. They're easier to spot because they are bigger. The Lone Star tick, we've heard a lot about that one. It is increasing in popularity in New York State. Kind of the interesting thing about that one is that's the first reported tick. So they've found descriptions of a tick like the Lone Star tick dating back to the late 1700s. So ticks have been around for a long time. They're not going to go anywhere. This is the one we are concerned about when we talk about Lyme disease. This is the black-legged tick. One thing that makes it different from the other ones is its legs are actually black instead of brown. That's how it got its name. We don't need to, we can skip the life cycle. Okay, so our ticks like to be found in shady, moist areas. They can't be dry. Their bodies will dehydrate and they'll desiccate very quickly. So they live in areas where they can keep their hydration up. Okay, so moist, shady areas, lawns and gardens. A lot of times we don't think about our garden as being a tick habitat, but that's a prime tick habitat, and sometimes we don't protect ourselves when we go there. Edge of woods, stone walls, they live 18 to 24 inches off the ground. They don't jump, they don't fly, and they will not drop on you as you walk under a tree. I had a lengthy discussion with someone yesterday about that they do not drop off the trees. They're kind of smart. They will pick their host. They can determine breath and body odor. They're very sensitive to carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. So that's kind of how they can indicate that something's coming, that maybe they can hitch a ride and get a meal. They sense body heat, the vibrations of animals or different things walking through the forest. Some can identify a shadow. So they'll wait in a questing position. They hold on to the leaf or wherever they are with their back legs. Or front legs are just kind of feeling around. As soon as it brushes up against something, they have little claws on their legs that will attach, and then they search for a place to find a meal. They attach to us because they are trying to feed. they're just trying to get disease. It is through the feeding process that they transmit diseases to us or to their host. They cut a hole in the skin, their mouth parts go under the skin. And then as they're feeding, then they regurgitate, and the saliva can actually transmit the disease from their gut into their host that they're eating.
Like a mosquito.
Pass out any minute.
Typically people itch when I get done. I don't take it personally anymore, so it's just a. Yes, it's kind of an occupational hazard I have now too. If allowed to, ticks want to feed for about 7 days. So a lot of times when we find them, particularly on our pets or on us, when they're really engorged and fat looking, they've been allowed to feed for several days. And that's when we start to worry about disease transmission. If they will ingest any pathogens from the host. Typically, it takes 36 to 48 hours. They've kind of lowered that a little bit. They're kind of saying 24 hours for the bacteria that causes Lyme to be transmitted from the host, or from the tick into the host. That's where our tick checks become critical. This is just a graphic of how big they can get if they're allowed to feed. If we were allowed to feed for 7 days continuously, this would happen to us also. So, we try to find them quicker. The easiest thing we can do is protect ourselves. All tick-borne illnesses are 100% preventable. We just have to be diligent, and we have to protect ourselves, and it's up to us to make sure that we do that. Okay. Obviously, the easiest thing we can do is stay inside and never go outside, but we don't want to do that. So we want to avoid taller grass. If we're hiking on our hikes that the county takes, we want to kind of stay in the middle of the paths. We don't want to wander off into where there's some taller grass and leaf litter. And there's some other precautions we can take. So if we go on a hike, and this is not popular advice in the summertime, we should be wearing long pants and long sleeves. Our pants tucked into our socks and our shirts tucked into our pants. It's a great look, but it does help protect against ticks. Typically, we kind of advise white socks too, so that makes it even better. But we want to minimize the amount of exposed skin that a tick can attach to. We want to make it harder for the tick to find a meal. So if we tuck everything in and wear those long pants and long sleeves, it has to crawl farther. We have a greater chance of seeing them before they attach.
We do have an anti-bullying program.
So we want to wear light colored clothes. It should be tight weave so the ticks can't get in.
Can you spray insect repellent on the socks?
Yeah.
Respond to that.
Yeah. So there's other things we can do. You want to use insect repellent on your skin. Obviously, you want to follow the directions on the product. DEET is kind of considered the gold standard. That's the one that's usually been used as the most effective insect repellent, and that's for skin. There are also
called DEET?
DEET, 20% DEET. It doesn't need to be more than 20%. Some of them are like 40%. That doesn't necessarily make them more effective. Other things that we can use insect repellent-wise is picaridin, something called IR3535 that used to be in Avon Skin So Soft before they marketed that as an insect repellent. And lemon eucalyptus oil are kind of the most common and most accepted insect repellents that we can use on the skin. What we're really, a lot of researchers are kind of encouraging people to do, particularly those that are outside a lot, is to treat our clothes with something called permethrin. In its natural state, permethrin is synthesized by the chrysanthemum flower, and it is a highly effective insecticide at killing ticks. In this particular study, which is from the University of Rhode Island, the Tick Institute there, they did a study. They sprayed socks and shoes of people who spent time outside. They were 73.6% less likely to have a tick bite than those people who are outside and didn't spray their socks or shoes. So it is highly effective. I did a presentation last night with a woman who does a lot of hiking. She has used permethrin for quite a few years, and she actually will find dead ticks on her, and she hasn't found a tick bite while she's been out hiking. So it is effective. It is safe for humans and dogs. Cats, if cats lick it when it's wet, it can make them sick. Once it's dried, it's not a problem. The biggest problem with permethrin is our bees and aquatic animals, so we have to be careful when we're treating them. Okay. Other simple things we can do: keep long hair tied back, especially when we're gardening. Bathe or shower as soon as possible after being outside, and do a complete full body tick check every time we come in from outside. Okay. ticks are looking to feed, and they're very smart at finding out of the way places. So we really need to make sure that we're checking the out of the way places that we don't want to look at all the time. Hairline, ears, belly button, behind the knees, and the groin. I get a lot of funny looks when I say the groin, but there are lots. The groin is actually a very common place for ticks to attach. It's protected, and they have success. Okay? They live quite often, so we need to, make sure we're checking all those areas, including the back. Get a mirror, somebody to help you. You can't do that all by yourself. The tick check is the single most important thing that we can do to protect ourselves against tick-borne illness. Remember, it takes 24 hours. So if we do a tick check every day, if I find a tick check tonight, I know that it wasn't there yesterday. I know that I've greatly reduced my risk of disease transmission. So we have to do those. We have to teach our kids to do those. And we do a lot of education with kids and encourage them from a very young age to learn how to do tick checks. They know what their body looks like. They know what's normal. They find something that looks a little bit different to them. They go to mom or dad or parent guardian and say, look, this doesn't look right to me. And then mom or, the adult can take care of that, and we can remove the tick as quickly as possible. Along with that, we have to check our pets. Dogs are in particular susceptible to tick bites and Lyme. Dogs can bring, or our pets can bring the ticks into the home. If you have children, my younger son sleeps on top of my dog. So, if the dog had any ticks, then they could transmit that to our kids. And dog ticks will infest your house, so we really want to try to make sure that we keep them out of our house. With our pets, we check the same common areas that we check on us. So the ears, the armpits, around the tail, the chest. Okay. If you're outside, preferably you want to remove any clothes that you're wearing outside your home. I know that's not always possible. Your neighbors may not appreciate that. But you want to take them off as quickly as possible so that you don't go traipsing through your house with all these ticks that may fall off and then have a problem. You also would want to dry your clothes in a hot dryer for 10 to 15 minutes before you wash them. They will survive the wash machine. They will not survive. The ticks will not survive the dryer. Another tip I like to give people is sticky paper lint rollers. Keep them by your doors. Keep them in your car. Roll them over your clothes and your skin. Any ticks that haven't attached, stick to the paper. You take it off, crush it up, throw it out. Those ticks now are not on you and they're not in your house. And it's a fairly inexpensive way to kind of get some of those loose ticks. Okay. If you get a tick, or it probably should be when you have a tick bite, the first thing you want to do is not panic. Doesn't mean that you are going to get sick. Not all ticks are infected, and even if they are, does not mean that that's going to be able to transmit the bacteria to you. The most important thing we want to do is take the tick off as quickly as possible. We don't want to try to drown it, so we don't want to put petroleum jelly, nail polish, any sort of essential oil. We don't want to burn them off. All of that irritates the tick. They will regurgitate faster. We're actually increasing our risk of disease transmission. We want to get a pair of pointy tweezers that we can get for about $1.50. Keep them with us, grab the tick close to the skin, and just pull it out gently. Don't jerk it out because it'll break. If the mouth parts get stuck in the skin, it's not a problem. Once we've removed the tick, the germs are in the tick, the mouth parts can't do us any, can't transmit disease anymore. So if the mouth parts break off, we just treat it like we would a splinter, and eventually the body will kick it out. Okay. If you have a tick, you want to kill it. Obviously, we don't want to let it run around anymore. So you can put it in a container of alcohol. I like to tell people to take a piece of clear packing tape, put the tick in that, fold it over. The tick will die, and then you write the date on it.
Rubbing alcohol.
Rubbing it again. Oh.
Not a glass of whiskey.
Well, that might do it too. I'm not sure. They won't be able to walk anymore. So a piece of packing tape, fold it over, put the date on it. That way you remember the date you found the tick. We want to check the area where the tick was for up to 30 days because the rash and the symptoms can develop up to 30 days. So we write the date on it. We kind of remember when that tick was, and we can, after 30 days we're not sick, we can just throw it out, or we can take it to our doctor for, until, you got to take it, just take it to and say, look, this is what I found, what do we think? Okay? Once we take it out, clean it just like we would a regular wound. Lyme disease, there are a lot of problems with Lyme disease. It mimics a lot of other illnesses. If we don't see the tick, if we don't develop a rash, the early signs and symptoms are simply like the flu, the cold, or we just don't feel well, we're just tired. So a lot of times we don't catch it quickly. When we catch it quickly with antibiotics, usually have good results. Okay. On this picture is the classic bullseye rash that we all associate with Lyme disease. Not everybody gets that, unfortunately. So we just kind of have to be aware. Early signs and symptoms: fever, chills, headache, fatigue, muscle and joint aches, swollen lymph nodes. Again, nothing really outstanding that we would kind of set that off for us. As it progresses, then we can have arthritis and other more significant problems, sleep disturbances. Not everybody has the same signs and symptoms, so it makes it a little difficult too. With pregnancy, we want to catch it early. The antibiotics are not harmful to the fetus. However, if Lyme is allowed to progress, it can lead to stillbirth. So we need to make sure that we're recognizing that. There are some natural tick repellents that can be used. EPA doesn't test the effectiveness, so that's kind of a personal choice. We can just kind of go through these. I'm not going to go through. We do have these are just some of the other illnesses that we're seeing an increase of. Not Rocky Mountain spotted fever here, but anaplasmosis and babesiosis are two in Sullivan County that we're seeing an increase of. We're also seeing co-infections, so Lyme and some of these other bacterial infections. Powassan was a big thing last year. Everybody was kind of up in arms about Powassan. The difference with Powassan, it's a viral infection as opposed to a bacterial infection. There was an older gentleman in Saratoga made public because he died of complications of Powassan, but he had a lot of other problems. Currently not very common. I think there's only been 75 cases total of Powassan over the past decade. The next one will... Yeah, 75 cases in the past decade. We have, remember, Lyme up to 300,000 cases per year. So it is something that the State Department of Health is looking at and monitoring, but it's not nearly as common as Lyme. Many fewer ticks carry that virus than carry the Lyme disease bacteria. That's just information about
I just
Powassan.
want to point out that there have been no identified cases of Powassan virus in Sullivan.
Nope. And none this year at all so far. Then the rest, this is just more natural tick stuff. So that's kind of the nutshell on ticks. I hope I didn't.
Get a Seresto collar.
The
Yeah.
skin's so soft, because I've heard about that for years. Is it still used? Is it still effective, or are you saying they removed the ingredient?
No, they still have it in it. They just don't. They don't market it as a. Well, they do now a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yep.